This dice game is 40,000 years older than the pyramids before writing, before farming. Before a single permanent house existed anywhere on Earth, humans were already rolling bones across the dirt to test their luck. Not metaphorical bones, actual bones. Small ankle bones from sheep, goats, and deer, carved smooth by hand and thrown across cave floors by firelight. Archaeologists call them Astragali. Everyone else just calls them the first dice in human history. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why our ancestors needed a game of chance before they even needed a permanent house to live in. Stick around. This story starts colder and stranger than you probably think. Picture Europe during the last ice age, roughly 40,000 years ago, when glaciers stretched across the continent and the sun barely warmed anything. Small bands of early Homo sapiens huddle around fires in caves and rock shelters, sharing space with the smoke and the cold. Food comes and goes hard with the seasons, and there's no fridge, no farm, and no backup plan waiting nearby. A hunt can fail for weeks straight with nothing to show for the effort. Winters last half the year, and the cold alone can kill a healthy adult in a single bad night. Life here runs entirely on uncertainty. You never truly know if tomorrow brings a full stomach or another empty one. And in the middle of all that uncertainty, someone reached down, picked up a small carved bone, and threw it across the ground just to see where it landed. Here's the fact that surprises most people the first time they hear it. The oldest known gaming pieces on Earth are Astragali, small bones from the ankles of sheep, goats, and deer. Archaeologists have pulled them from sites scattered across Europe and Asia, some dated to more than 40,000 years old, long before agriculture or writing existed anywhere. These bones naturally have 4 flat sides instead of 6. Throw one, and it lands on one of those sides completely at random, the same basic principle behind every dice roll that's happened since. That's a dice roll. Long before anyone ever carved a single dot into a cube of stone, some of these ancient bones show wear patterns that only come from repeated throwing over years. Not chewing marks, not signs of tool use. Just smooth, rounded wear from throwing over and over on purpose, passed down across many generations of the same small community. Our ancestors weren't just eating these animals and moving on. They kept the leftover bones and quietly turned them into a game that outlived them. A species fighting daily just to survive shouldn't have time to spare for games. Yet here they are, throwing bones around a fire on purpose. Here's cause number 1, and it starts with the world itself. Life in the Ice Age ran almost entirely on outcomes nobody could actually control. Hunts failed more often than they succeeded, no matter how skilled the hunter. Weather turned violent without any warning at all. Every single decision, where to move camp, when to leave, which risk was even worth taking, came with absolutely no guarantees attached. Random chance wasn't some strange distraction from that harsh world. It matched that world perfectly, almost like a small safe copy of it. Throwing a bone and watching it land unpredictably let people practice living with uncertainty in a low-stakes, controlled way. Think of it like a fire drill for the brain, run over and over until the panic fades. You're not risking your life on this particular throw. You're just training how it feels in your body when you genuinely don't know the outcome ahead of time. That skill mattered far more than it sounds like on the surface. A hunter who could face uncertainty without freezing had a real, measurable edge over one who couldn't handle it at all. Games of chance likely trained that exact mental muscle, quietly, throw after throw, until staying calm under pressure became second nature. Here's cause 2, and it builds directly on top of the first one instead of repeating it. These early bone games weren't usually a solo activity. Gambling with bones was deeply social from the very start. It happened around shared fires, in groups often tied to bigger seasonal gatherings when separate bands crossed paths after months apart. Sharing a game of chance builds trust, faster than almost anything else available at the time. You watch closely how someone reacts the moment they win. You watch just as closely how they react the moment they lose. You catch whether they cheat when nobody's looking. You catch whether they get violent over a bad roll. You catch whether they laugh it off and offer a hand instead. In a small band where your survival depends completely on the people camped around you, that kind of information is priceless beyond measure. A simple game reveals who to trust long before any real crisis forces the question on you. Some researchers think early gambling also worked as a peaceful, built-in way to divide scarce food and resources fairly. Instead of fighting over the last bit of extra meat, you roll for it instead. Chance settles the dispute cleanly without a single punch thrown, and nobody walks away from the fire feeling personally cheated by another human being. A game replaces a fight before the fight ever starts. That's not a small upgrade to daily life, that's a genuine survival tool, quietly keeping small, tense, high-pressure groups from tearing themselves apart from the inside. There's another layer worth knowing here, and it changes how you should picture the whole scene. In many ancient cultures, these bone throws weren't treated as pure entertainment at all. They were treated as messages arriving from somewhere else entirely, a way to ask the universe a direct question and actually get an answer. Casting lots to make an important decision, reading the fall of a bone to guess at the future. Games of chance and spiritual belief started out completely tangled together, not as separate activities the way we tend to imagine them now. That's actually the myth worth correcting right here. Plenty of people assume gambling began as a light pastime, invented purely for fun by bored elites somewhere in ancient Rome or China. It didn't start that way at all. The earliest solid evidence points somewhere far rougher and much older than any palace. Ice Age hunter-gatherers, using nothing but animal bones, blending luck, hard decision-making, and deep belief into one single unified activity. Later civilizations picked up this same idea and expanded it dramatically. In ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists uncovered the royal game of an elaborate board buried inside a royal tomb roughly 4,500 years old, played using small pyramid-shaped dice. In ancient Egypt, people played Senet, a board game tied so closely to ideas about the afterlife that finished boards were regularly buried alongside the dead for the journey ahead. Even ancient Indian epic poetry features a dice game as a major turning point in the entire story. In the Mahabharata, a prince loses his whole kingdom, his personal freedom, and nearly his entire family in one single high-stakes match against a rival. Fiction, sure, but it clearly shows how deep the link between chance and fate had already grown by that point in history. Rome and China built directly on top of all of this too. Roman soldiers gambled constantly with dice carved from bone and ivory during long breaks between battles. Ancient Chinese texts casually describe games of chance that were already thousands of years old by the time anyone wrote them down. But none of these later cultures actually invented the underlying idea. They simply inherited it from people much older than themselves. The whole concept of testing luck with a small random object reaches all the way back to the Ice Age. Long before writing existed, long before cities were ever built, long before money even existed as a concept anyone understood. Now stop and compare all of that to gambling as it exists today. Modern gambling runs through massive casinos, state-run lotteries, and instant sports betting apps, all built around odds calculated down to the exact decimal point. The global gambling industry now pulls in hundreds of billions of dollars every single year without slowing down. Behind every app and every slot machine sits serious math, careful psychology, and deliberate design built for exactly one goal, keeping you playing just a little bit longer. Ancient bone throwing had absolutely none of that hidden engineering behind it. No flashing lights built to hold your attention, no push notifications buzzing in your pocket at midnight. Just a single bone, a small group of people, and one shared moment of genuinely not knowing what happens next. But here's the truly wild part in all of this. The brain's actual response hasn't changed very much at all across 40,000 years. That familiar rush right before a card flips or a wheel finally stops spinning traces directly back to the same uncertainty response your ancestors felt watching a bone spin and land. Dopamine spikes not just the moment you win, but during the tense seconds right before you even find out whether you did. Modern casinos didn't actually invent that feeling from nothing. They simply figured out how to package it perfectly and sell it back to you, one roll at a time, forever, for profit. Here's another detail most people completely miss when they hear this story. Early humans weren't only gambling with bones from animals. Later evidence shows painted sticks, carefully marked pebbles, and small carved tiles used in exactly the same way across completely different, unconnected regions of the world. Different materials entirely, somehow the exact same idea showing up again and again with zero direct contact between the separate groups using it. Humans, independently, over and over across thousands of years, kept inventing new ways to test luck. That fact tells you something genuinely important about who we are. This wasn't one single clever invention from one specific person in one specific place. It was a recurring pattern that showed up wherever people faced enough daily uncertainty to actually need it. So let's bring this entire story back together now. Roughly 40,000 years ago, deep in the middle of an ice age, humans started throwing carved animal bones just to test outcomes they couldn't otherwise control. That simple habit trained people to handle real risk without panicking. It built genuine trust inside small, tight-knit survival groups. It settled disputes without a single act of violence. And it blurred the line between luck, careful decision-making, and deep belief in ways that still echo clearly through modern gambling today. We didn't invent this need for chance ourselves. We inherited it straight from people who never once saw a city, a coin, or a single written word in their entire lives. Every dice roll, every card game, every lottery ticket sold today traces back to a hand around a fire, throwing a small bone into the dark and waiting anxiously to see exactly where it landed. That's not just a fun, throwaway fact about ancient history. That's a real window into how deep the need to test uncertainty actually runs in all of us, even right now, in this very moment. Somewhere in your instincts, that same Ice Age impulse is still sitting there quietly, waiting patiently for the next roll. Drop a comment and tell me honestly if you think you'd have handled that Ice Age gamble. And if prehistoric facts like this one genuinely hook you, subscribe now. There's a lot more buried deep in our past worth digging back up.